Okay, Wednesday, March 18th. Welcome to tonight's class, guys. Tonight we're going to be talking about elastic recoil. Your connective tissue, your fascia, has an ability to recoil in the similar way as let's say a rubber band. So when you pull that rubber band and let it go, that sound, that action, that's elastic recoil, and that's what your connective tissue has the ability to do as well.
This propulsive aspect of gait is really important. When you look at the foot, the most critical phase of the foot is that it can get into a lever. You can see my foot, if I can. My foot is essentially getting into a lever. If you can't stabilize that lever position, you will not have optimal progression. And that's the point of gait, right? So if you're bringing in energy, and you're not releasing it effectively or efficiently, everything starts to break down. Now, you're working harder than you need to, right? And if you have a patient or a client that's like, oh, doc, I'm just exhausted. It is so much work to go from here to there. Without even looking at their foot, I know what foot type they have. You guys probably could guess as well. What type of foot do you think they have?
Pronated.
Overpronated, unlocked, unstable, right? Which should be telling you that they're not able to stabilize their foundation to transfer energy to get forward progression. If they're not working with the rubber band of their fascial system and just loading and recoiling and loading and recoiling, which is how we're supposed to move, now they have to actually use their energy. They have to engage their muscles, and there is an actual work output. Walking really isn't working, which is why if you walk to lose weight, a lot, right? Because there's not a high caloric output with just simple walking. It really is supposed to be this homeostatic kind of recoil. So if you are working when you walk, you're going to fatigue something. You start to stress something, and now you have Achilles tendonitis. You have, trochanteric bursitis. You have IT band syndrome. It's one of those. Okay. So, characteristic of walking, the most functional movement. I had given you what I was actually looking for. What was the characteristic of walking that's really important? There's progression, and then what's allowing you to progress? What's giving you the energy to progress? Lever. What's step one? What's the barrier? Before I go forward, I have to bring in the energy. I got to get the energy from somewhere. Where's that energy coming from? Yes, from the ground. Right? So all of your focus when you're thinking of functional movement, baseline functional movement, is how well is my patient or my client bringing in the repetitive impact forces? How are they responding to that repetitive stimulus? If we take on average 10,000, most of my patients take 20,000 steps a day. I'm sure you guys track your steps, hopefully. It's on your phone. You can do it for free, right? You track your steps. If you take 20,000 steps a day, just think that's 20,000 times a day that your foot is subconsciously interacting with the ground. 20,000 times a day, it is subconsciously supposed to be anticipating the impact. If you do not anticipate that impact 20,000 times a day, where do you think your injuries are coming from? From that. So they're not getting injured when they're doing squats with their trainer or they're taking Zumba or whatever, right? When you're in a gym setting or you're with your professional or I'm watching them squat, technically they're conscious, right? They're thinking about what they're doing. Oh, they want me to step down. Step down, good, Emily. Okay, good job, right? When they're doing things and they're on their phone and they're talking to their friend and they're all of that is subconscious. So you want to think of how are they handling those situations, right? So every time we walk, we strike the ground, we get impact forces. How many times your body weight and impact forces do you encounter when you strike the ground walking? 1 to 1.5. So 1.5 times your body weight, okay? Which might not seem like that much, but again, put it in perspective of whatever your body weight is. If you have a higher body weight, you're going to obviously have higher impact forces. One of the most common weight loss programs when someone's trying to, like, it's the new year, they have a resolution, is to go walking, right? And then they're not anticipating the impact, they're disconnected from the nervous system because they were sedentary, they're probably not breathing the right way, there's probably lots of other things. And then they come to me because now they have plantar fasciitis, so they can't, their foot hurts them so bad that they can't walk, but that was their one way to lose weight, so they just forget it, right? So it all has to do with perspective, okay? To put it into perspective even more, when we walk, we strike our heel 1.5 times our body weight, and we go through mid-stance, late mid-stance, and then we push off to take our next step. You actually release 2.5 times your body weight. You bring in 1.5. That 1.5 is your gift. It's the gift from gravity and the ground. Here is your gift of 1.5 times your body weight. Somehow between the rest of that step, or that gait cycle, your body doubled it. How did you double the energy?
Pushing into the ground, applying muscular force.
A little bit more, keep going.
And the ground's going to push back.
Spring, what is your spring?
Yeah, elastic recoil from your tendons.
Yes, your connective tissue. Yes. So it is from your myofascia and your myotendon relationship that allows you to actually double the energy that comes in. So if you've ever looked at a force peak curve for walking and running, right? So it's essentially a little hill and then a larger hill. I'll have one later, I think. I think it's in the slide. Where usually there's a lower impact peak and then it goes down and it goes up when you push off. And it's essentially saying that when you walk, you give this gift, your body doubles it so that you can recoil and get this leg forward. This is weight, right? How is your leg going to get from back here all the way up to here unless it's like a rubber band that you're releasing or a bow and arrow release, right? That has to be your fascial tissue. So the sign of someone actually working with the ground and being efficient and having this great ground-body energy relationship is that not only can they bring in energy, but they're doubling it. That's what you want to look for. Okay? Like springy people, dancers, kids, cats, right? They're very rubber bandy. So as we age and we know our fascia dehydrates and maybe you have some injuries and compensations, you become less rubber bandy or less efficient. You lose the ability to double energy, which means now you've lost the ability to be efficient and just recoil through your connective tissue. You have a higher injury risk, right? Your compensation goes up. Your work output goes up. If it takes a lot of energy to do something, are you going to do it? Probably not, right? Unless you guys in the room probably would do it anyway and push through it, right? But most people wouldn't do it. And be like, I'm exhausted, I'm not doing that, right? Then they put on weight and you get all these other comorbidities. So that's what I want you to think about and remember, is that to truly be moving the way that we were designed to move, like little rubber bands and cats kind of moving around, is you have to be able to bring the energy in, double it, and recoil it through your connective tissue.
So the connective tissue, or the fascia, can only hold the charge, so to speak, or the energy of that elastic recoil for only a second or so. So if I go to jump and I sit in a squat position for more than a second, I've already lost the elastic recoil. So if I want to jump using elastic recoil, it's going to be a flex and extend very, very quickly. So boom, boom, boom. So you're loading and unloading relatively quickly. So what we're going to do is we're going to experience elastic recoil through all the cardinal planes of motion, and then we're going to expand and learn how we can grow that ability of our connective tissue to more productively. The is the elastic aspect. First and foremost, we're going to work with the sagittal plane. So in the sagittal plane, we have which two movements? That's right, everybody. Flexion and extension. So that's what we're going to start with first. So feet shoulder width apart. We're just going to bend forward and touch our toes. Simple as that. Now we're going to do extension. Okay, so with each of those movements, there was likely a part of your body or a part of your spine that moved more than the other parts. We'll call those a hinge. And what we want to do is we want to distribute that movement more evenly throughout the whole kinetic chain. So I'm going to try that movement again, but this time I'm going to pay special attention to how well my body moves through both flexion and extension. Here we go. Okay. Now extension. Okay, so as a practice, one of the things that you can do, and this is very safe even if you haven't been warmed up. This is something that you could do safely if you do it very slow. But if you notice that while you're moving, there's a part that's moving a lot more than everything else, come back to neutral and start the movement over again so that you can distribute that movement more evenly throughout the whole kinetic chain. You will notice that each one of these movement patterns moves through all of the cardinal planes in one way or another. And truly, even though we assess movement in terms of planes of motion, rarely do we have a movement that's solely happening in one plane of motion. So even if I was to flex my shoulder, because of the scapulohumeral rhythm aspect, where you see my humerus is connected to my scapula, as I'm moving through flexion, even though I'm moving through that sagittal plane, my scapula is coming along for the ride. So there's actually some frontal plane movement happening simultaneously. So I'm going to show you several movements that we can use to cultivate the elastic aspect of our connective tissue, and it also happens to be a fantastic way to cultivate interoception, which is your inner sense of movement. And it's a fantastic way to really build your sense of safe movement. With regard to connective tissue and all training for that matter, it's important to follow a feel-good mentality. In other words, if the movement feels good, it's likely that it's having some sort of a productive or a benefit that's manifesting. But if it starts to feel sketchy and it doesn't feel right, that's an indication that your nervous system and all the mechanoreceptors located not just in the muscles but in the connective tissue are telling you, take it easy, lay off, maybe scale it down a little bit, maybe decrease the range of motion, maybe decrease the speed, maybe omit the movement pattern altogether. But our body has this ability to let us know when things are right and when it's not right. And so when we're training, we want to maximize our sense of of that system and practice discerning what that system's trying to tell us. Elasticity is an energy efficient movement. So in other words, when we're focusing on, let's say we're going to throw a ball in from out of bounds in soccer, you'll notice that the feet have to stay on the ground, planted, and the soccer player will initiate the movement distally, meaning they'll contract the muscles in the toes and feet and then send a wave through the whole chain or the chains of connective tissue throughout the body, and then initiate that movement from the bottom to the top. And then by the time you get to the top part, you get that nice whip action. And that's elastic recoil in training. So it's going to look something like this. While we're doing these movements, we often use something called distal initiation, meaning that the furthest point away from the object I'm trying to move, or my load, the furthest point away from my load is where I'm going to initiate my movement from. So as you see me doing that step behind with one of my legs in a staggered stance, I'm actually initiating the movement from the ground, and then the movement moves all the way up through the chain. The elastic recoil moves all the way up through the chain, and then at the very last moment, boom, I'm able to release the ultimate power. So it looks something like this. Same thing with flexion and extension. So anytime you see somebody throwing a ball, whether it's a pitcher, a quarterback, it doesn't really matter sport, you'll notice that they're initiating the movement distally. And what they're doing is they're using not just their muscle strength, but the elastic recoil of the connective tissue to get that object, that ball or whatever it is, or to even get themselves, even a runner is going to load that connective tissue and then shoot off.